Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. I know it's the evening before a day off. We appreciate you all coming to join us tonight. We are excited to present for you acknowledgements, rewards, and incentives in a virtual world. And this is great advice for supporting your students during this time where we are in all kinds of different environments. Our presenter tonight is Erin Day. She is our Northern Behavior Support Specialist, and she's a wealth of knowledge. She just recently came out of the classroom. She began working with us in August, and so she has experience of being in the classroom, but also making that switch to the virtual world, and we're really excited to have her expertise with us this evening as she shares this PowerPoint with you. Just a real quick note to you, we are recording, so we can share this with others on our YouTube channel. If you haven't joined our YouTube channel or shared or liked our YouTube channel, we encourage you to do that. You can go to YouTube and look up WVBMHTAC, and it'll take you to a wealth of videos that you can use to learn more about PBIS and the work that we do. You can also like us on Facebook under WVPBIS, and that's where you can find more information about upcoming webinars. I know we have one in the works for December regarding how you can start planning for the new year. And we would love for you to join us on Facebook so you can keep up with everything that we're doing. So we are recording. We are going to attempt to do a few polls today. That is a new experiment for us, so we appreciate your grace as we practice that towards the beginning of our presentation. There also will be a short Qualtrics survey at the end. We're trying to look for more information about what is the best time for you guys to attend these webinars. We picked 3:30 to 4:30 in hopes that it would be after school. But we know really what we're finding is that there is really no good time, but we would love to have your feedback about that. So we encourage you to participate in that survey at the end of this presentation. But for right now, that's all my intro that I had. For the record, I don't think I introduced myself. My name is Alicia Zeman. I'm the PBIS coordinator, and I'm excited to allow Erin to take over and share with us what she knows about acknowledgements, rewards, and incentives in the virtual world.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. So like Alicia said, this is about acknowledgements, rewards, and incentives in a virtual world. And this presentation is really coming together because we had a lot of requests for assistance on this topic from our schools. And as I was looking into information to put together a presentation for them, we decided to go ahead and make this a live webinar to really help as many people at once as we could. So if you're joining us live, we're so happy to have you here. And if you're watching the recording, we're glad we were able to get that to you and support you that way as well. So just a little background for those of you who may not know. We are coming to you from the West Virginia Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center, and we are a collaboration between the West Virginia Autism Training Center at Marshall University and the West Virginia Department of Education's Office of Special Education. And our Technical Assistance Center houses school-wide PBIS, early childhood PBIS, and mental health first aid. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about feedback and acknowledgement and review the basics of what that looks like in a traditional setting that we're used to, and then asking the question and answering, can this be done virtually? We're also going to do that for the topic of rewards and incentives, and then talk about the back and forth to make it work in this new normal and give you some examples and some support in doing that. Okay, so we're going to start with feedback and acknowledgement and reviewing the basics of what this means within our school in a traditional setting. So the National Center on PBIS shares some key practices for implementing Tier 1. And one of those practices is a continuum of procedures for encouraging expected behavior. So what this really means is that team is going to come up with a way to acknowledge students when they're exhibiting appropriate behaviors that we want to see. So they're going to develop a system for providing those acknowledgements in addition to offering some behavior-specific praise when students do what's expected of them. And it's really important to remember that this system should be linked to your school-wide expectations. It should be used across settings and within classrooms. It should be used by 90% or more of all school personnel, and it should be available to all students within the school. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But before I do, I wanted to share this resource with you from Florida PBIS. Alicia actually sent this to me, and it comes as a one-pager on their website. You can see there the link to where she found that, or you can visit their Florida PBIS site and search for it if you look up Classroom PBIS. But really, it talks a little bit more about how to acknowledge behaviors by explaining what that looks like and why we do that. So I'm not going to read each piece of this to you, but I want to hit the basics of really talking about making sure we're doing this in a preventative way. So before we anticipate a behavior that we don't want to see, we want to set our students up for success. So for example, it's saying there that you may prompt an expected behavior prior to when it's needed. So before we go into our center work today, remember that showing respect looks like listening to your partner. And then when you see that happening, offering them that behavior specific praise, a reinforcer, and then also adding the layer of a group contingency so that your students are working on that growth mindset, working together, and that as a teacher, you're making sure that you emphasize the desired behaviors that you want to see. It also explains a little bit more of acknowledging and how to do that and tips for when you are providing acknowledgements to your students. And some of the things to note there would be, once you give an acknowledgement or a reinforcer to a student, that should not be taken away from them, that you're going to have layers, which I'm going to talk about here a little bit in some more detail, and that you're making sure you give the students a variety of things that they're working towards. So like I said, this is a resource that I have linked in the resources that I'll show you here in a little bit if you want to check it out and have it for your toolbox that you're using. When we're talking about acknowledgements, we want to make sure that we're taking a layered approach to this. So what this means is that we want to make sure that we're offering acknowledgements or providing acknowledgements to our students in a variety of ways. So that would be an immediate acknowledgement, which offers high frequency, a high rate of return, and those are predictable. So the things like setting them up for the transition or explaining to them when an acknowledgement is going to be given because you're looking for something right away. The next layer of that is to give them unexpectedly or intermittently. So maybe as they're working in the classroom, you catch them being respectful or being responsible in centers, and you're going to pass out acknowledgements during that time or give acknowledgements during that time. And then the third layer to think about is long term. So how can we look into the future and really provide these acknowledgements over the long haul to keep our students invested in making those positive choices? So some examples of acknowledgements you may be using. Some schools are using tickets. You can see those up there in the corner. They're collecting those for each grade level there at the high school. Some of them use, money or tokens. Here you can see on the right a gotcha coupon that's passed out at a school. And this one, the orange one up here in the corner, is a shout out that students get written to them, and it's read over the announcement. So just wanted to show you a few examples. All of these are being used in some of our schools of some acknowledgements that you may be using in your school now or maybe considering using with your students. Let's talk about why we're really here today and answer the question of, can this be done virtually? So when we're talking about feedback and acknowledgement, so that's thinking about the expectations we had for our students and acknowledging them and providing feedback to them when they're displaying those behaviors. So can this be done virtually? And the first thing I want to talk about is why we even want to answer this question. Why would this be important to our current situation? So is it important right now? And think about what we know about acknowledging students and why we do this. We know that they're motivated by acknowledgements and that these are proven to increase wanted behaviors. But the other question is this just one more thing? We know that everyone is doing their best to navigate the new normal right now, and this includes our students as well as you. There's a lot that's unknown, and there's a lot that's changing every day. So is it just one more thing to do, or is it really important? But what we know is that both teachers and students will benefit from a solid external system of knowing what's expected of them and following through with acknowledgements and rewards, just like we do when we have them in person 100% of the time. So when we're talking about that, we're really thinking about how we're approaching education this year. And when we're talking about those external systems, we know that if we make things predictable for our students, if we have our expectations set up, if they know that when they follow those expectations, they're going to get feedback, they're going to be acknowledged, and they're going to work for some rewards and incentives. If we can put that in place and make it really solid for them, then it takes away that uncertainty of what is unknown about their situation right now. So the short answer is that yes, this can be done virtually. You can use an acknowledgement system even when your students are in a virtual learning environment. And there's three things that we're really going to talk about to make this work the best. The first is to refer to your expectations. The second is to consider ways to build positive relationships and provide them with behavior-specific praise. And the third is to plan ways to track their acknowledgements that you're providing. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these and give you some ideas for how this could work. Consider acknowledging things for being on time for their videos or live lessons, participating in online discussions, completing their work, submitting it before it's due or on time, and then simply for working hard on their assignments or assessments. And what this really does is dig into our expectations that we have set for our students. So on the screen here, I have a few examples of some remote learning expectations that some schools have come up with. The school-wide expectations are going to stay the same here. So if you're using something like be respectful, be responsible, be safe, or here you can see be respectful, be responsible, be ready to succeed. If your school has not already done so, I'm going to encourage you to take those overarching expectations of your school, your be respectful, safe, responsible, whatever those may be, and look at those through the lens of online or virtual learning. So you can see an example here in the middle at the top. So those students at that school know that when they're working from home, they will check assignments daily, use technology appropriately, and turn in their work on time. When the teacher sees those things, they're going to provide feedback or an acknowledgement to their students. On the right side, you can see some remote learning expectations broken down into what teachers, students, and parents will do, because we know all three of those are major stakeholders in what's happening in education right now. And at the bottom on the left, you can see a matrix that was made for a hybrid setting that has how to be respectful, responsible, and safe in physical environments in the building, like the hallway in the classroom or on the bus, and then in virtual environments like an online group or when you're working independently. So some of you have already worked through this if you've been to some of our other sessions, but if this is something you haven't thought of doing yet for your school and you would like some help on how to do this, please reach out to us and I'm going to share information at the end of this for you. But we would love to help you make this work in a virtual world for your students and really get those external systems strong for them so they know what's expected of them. The next topic I said we want to really think about when we're talking about virtual acknowledgements is to build positive relationships. So try things like greeting your students when they log in or sign on for a lesson, just like you would when they walk through your classroom door. Greeting them by name or sharing a positive comment. I know a lot of teachers do that as their students enter the physical building, the physical classroom, but you can see here at the bottom, there's ways to make that virtual too. Having things like a funny face greeting or a wave or a certain little song that they sing. So just something that acknowledges that you see them and you appreciate their time and their attention to what you're doing that day. And another way to do this, to build positive relationships, is to do those student shout outs virtually. On the right is an example from a school's Facebook page. And this is from last spring when they did a student spotlight each week. So every week, the parents would submit pictures of their students doing work at home. And the teachers would turn these in to the school technology person. And they would put together a post on Facebook every week to highlight work that students were doing. I didn't include the pictures here because I didn't want to put those out for everybody, but you can see there the idea of just giving a shout out to students for working hard, or if there was a specific activity that they were doing or something special that a classroom was working on, those got highlighted, and it made the kids really excited to work and to keep working and to work hard because they looked forward to that shout out at the end of each week. In addition to building those positive relationships, we really want to talk about how to offer them behavior-specific praise, because those are two different things. We build the positive relationships with them, but how do we offer them very specific praise for what they're doing? So some non-examples of that would be things like Brian is sitting in his seat or simply saying good job without connecting that to what they're doing that's related to an expectation, or giving them a ticket or an acknowledgement without saying anything, or only giving out tickets for kids who are going above and beyond and not for simply meeting the basic expectations that we have for them. So to do this the correct way, to provide behavior specific praise, step 1 is to identify the student or the group. Step 2 is to include a term of praise. So for example, the first one might be Alicia. And the term of praise might be, thank you, Alicia. Step 3 would be to describe or acknowledge a specific behavior or rule for being acknowledged. Thank you, Alicia. I really saw that you logged in on time for our session today. Link that to a school-wide expectation. So thank you, Alicia. I saw that you logged into our session on time today. That shows me you're being responsible. And then an optional part of that is to provide a tangible reinforcement or something that they get points for. So, thank you, Alicia, for logging in on time today. That shows me that you're being responsible. I'm going to make sure I give you a class point on Class Dojo for that. I love this specific feedback because it can be done in such a short amount of time. So some other examples of that, here you can see a matrix that was set up for a certain classroom on being responsible, being respectful, and being safe. So some ideas of how to give behavior-specific praise based on those could be things like, Diane, awesome, you're demonstrating listening to the speaker. That's being respectful. Or this whole table group cleaned up their lab area when the period bell rang. Well done, way to show responsibility. So that's something super quick that reinforces what we want to see our students doing. And we know that when we do this, it gets the other students who may not be displaying those behaviors on board with doing the things that we want to see more of. This can also be done virtually. Using whatever platform you may be using for your online learning. You may have an app like Remind or some Class Dojo or something similar where you're able to communicate with your families. You may be using Seesaw for your students completing their work, or you may be using Schoology. All of these and other apps that are out there that I haven't mentioned have the option for you to send messages or comment on your students' work. So some ideas for how to provide acknowledgements within those settings could simply be things like, thanks for logging in on time and participating during our class lesson. Great work today. So you may send that out to the whole class or everyone that logged in and thank them for what they were doing. Or Josh, all your iReady minutes are finished. Nice job. I did this a lot last year. I was teaching in the spring when we went virtual. And whenever I would see my students completing something, we did have virtual expectations set up. So one of those would be that they had to finish all of their iReady minutes by the end of the week. And as soon as I saw them finished, I would log on, send a super quick message on Class Dojo to their parents and say, I see you got your reading minutes done. Awesome job. Keep up the great work. Keep working hard. So just acknowledging that you see that they're doing the hard work at home, because this isn't easy on them any more than it is on us. Or something like, so proud of 6th grade this week, keep working hard. Just a quick acknowledgement that you see that they're all trying their best. Some other ways to provide those acknowledgements could be things like I said, I use Class Dojo. That's why I'm using it as an example, because it's something I'm familiar with. I know there are a lot of other apps out there that do very similar things. But this is an actual screenshot of what I had last year set up for acknowledgements for my students. So things like adding a comment on our writing activity. Our writing activity was interactive every week on Schoology, and the students were asked to comment something every day. So anytime they added a comment, they got a point. If they did their math lessons on Zern, if they finished their quiz or took their spelling test or turned something in on time, anytime one of those expectations were met, the students got a point for doing that. And then later on, I'll talk about rewards, but they worked for certain rewards based on those points that they were earning. There's also something built into Schoology. There's a badges option, which I didn't know about last spring, and I really wish I would have, because I think this is a great way to use a platform that you're already using if it's something that's in place in your county for providing your online work. They do have a badges option that you can edit to match the expectations that you have, and you can give your students badges similar to giving students points on something like Class Dojo. I don't know a lot about it because I don't have access to Schoology anymore, but I did put a link here on the screen, and that's an article that just explains what badges are in Schoology and how to use them. So if you're using that platform and you think tracking acknowledgements that way may be helpful to you, I'd encourage you to check out that article because it did have really great information. Some other things I found by doing a super quick search on Teachers Pay Teachers. All of these were free because I know teachers are already putting a lot out there for your students. So whatever you can snag off of there for free is always a win. So these are obviously geared for your younger kids, but there's an example of a gumball machine or a smiley face sticker chart. Both of these were Google Slides, so they were able to be done digitally. You could send them to your students, and they could see those and be interactive with those if you're looking for a way to track things, to hand out acknowledgements because they're not with you, to hand out something physical like a ticket or a token to them. Here on the left, I also found that on Teachers Pay Teachers is just a Google sheet for tracking behavior. This was an Excel sheet that was set up for points earned and points spent. So, if they're earning points for a reward and they spend a certain amount of those, that was set up to do that, to calculate that for you. And then on the right is just something I made in a Word document. That you could make something similar to use for whatever your needs were. And I am going to go over a specific example of how you could use these things later. But that was just simply a place to track your students and maybe give them tally marks. So let's say you're using tickets, or let's say you're using Mustang bucks or whatever it may be. If your students aren't with you, anytime you would hand them one of those acknowledgements, making tally marks to keep track of what they would be earning in the physical environment. That way you can put those together when they do come back to you or calculate that for your virtual rewards. So just a few examples there. And like I said, here in just a little bit, I am going to go over how to kind of put all this together and make it work and make it flow for you. So before I move forward, if you have any questions, make sure you put those in the chat. I know Alicia and Terrell are watching that for me and can let me know. So please make sure you stop me if you have any questions or if there's something that didn't make sense. But I am going to shift gears a little bit and talk about rewards and incentives. So we talked about acknowledgements and feedback, which is giving that, acknowledging that we see what our students are doing. But we know that the added layer of them working towards something helps with their motivation in continuing to do this. So let's just quickly review the basics of what it means to give rewards and incentives for our students. So think about ways that you're provided incentives and rewarded as adults. All of these are things I use. So Kohl's Cash, I love because I might be going in there and I don't know at the time they're giving out Kohl's Cash, and I was doing a little shopping and now I've got $10 extra to spend. So it definitely encourages me to shop there more often because it's likely that I'm going to get something back for that. Using a Kroger's card or whatever grocery store you may have near you for rewards. I know as I'm shopping, I have to buy groceries every week for my family anyway, and now I've got 10 cents off my gas that I need to drive. Points, air miles, hotel discounts, whatever it is you may get from using your credit card because you're spending your money anyway when you're going to the store, getting gas or going out to eat. So putting that on your credit card, knowing you're going to get cash back or an incentive for using that, or safe driver discounts or something similar on your insurance. So as adults, whether we even realize it or not, we are offered incentives and we are rewarded for things that we already have to do. So if it motivates us to continue doing those, it makes sense that it's going to motivate our kids if we offer them rewards to give them the encouragement to keep doing the things that they already need to do. So can this be done virtually? And again, absolutely it can. It's going to look different than it does in the setting. And this is where I know a lot of the questions that we have been getting have come from. So the incentives and the acknowledgements and the feedback might make a little more sense and be easier to manipulate or to work out in a way that works for, your virtual kids or your hybrid kids or your teachers. But thinking about how to reward them when either you don't see them at all or you're only seeing them 1 or 2 days a week in person, really does get a little bit tricky, but it can be done. And again, there's 3 things we're really going to dig into to talk about how to pull this off. The first is to link your rewards to your feedback and acknowledgement system. So those are the things we just talked about. Whatever that may look like for you, whether it's an app where you're giving points, whether you're offering comments or something within Schoology or Seesaw or whatever platform your county is using, whether you're doing tally marks whenever you would want to give them that physical acknowledgement. So you're going to link these rewards to that system that you've set up for feedback and acknowledgement. You're going to link your rewards to that. You're going to remember to, again, use a layered approach and then be creative and have fun with it. Because the first few questions we got, we were kind of racking our brains and trying to get creative, but I really dug into a lot of resources and a lot of PBIS sites online, and there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of cool stuff that I didn't even think of. I wouldn't have thought of maybe if I was in the classroom. So this is a really awesome opportunities for teachers to do one of the things they do best, and that is getting creative and making it work. So let's first talk about that. Linking that to your feedback and acknowledgements. So we know that if you want something, you must teach it and then you must acknowledge it. So again, thinking about, okay, if I'm giving acknowledgements, I need to make sure that those acknowledgements are set up so that they're working for something. So in terms of our rewards and our incentives for our students, we're also going to use a layered approach like we did for our acknowledgements. That first layer is the immediate or high frequency layer. And that means that, so an example of that could be everyone who turns in their work on time today gets an assignment pass to use this week. So I'm going to set that up ahead of time. I'm going to tell my students this. If they're online, I'm going to send out a message to the whole class. Anyone that turns their work in on time today, you're going to get a pass on one of your other assignments that week. So that reward, that incentive is given to them immediately. This helps to reinforce that expectation, and it rewards students for following it right away, so they're more likely to continue meeting that expectation of turning their work in on time. The other layer is that unpredictable or intermittent layer. So without announcing it first to your students, you would send out a digital coupon to everyone who finished an assignment on time. This is just an example of that, not something you have to do. But I'm thinking of things that I was doing last year for my students to give you some examples of what you can do in your classroom. So we know that this makes it unpredictable. It catches them following expectations, and it motivates them to continue in those behaviors. So I know if I turned something in on time because I was following the expectation of being responsible with my work, and then my teacher sent me a coupon, I'm pumped about that. And I want to make sure I turn all my other work in on time too, because I might be getting something for that when I don't expect it. And that other layer is the long-term layer. So something could be an individual class or whole school gets a reward when that expectation is met. So this allows for that continued motivation across time, especially when they're working together to exhibit appropriate behaviors and earn rewards as a team. So if they know this is contingent on the whole class participating, they want to make sure their participation is counted and they're helping out and earning that reward. So just a few examples. I gave you a couple on the last screen. I'm going to talk about some more here just shortly, but a couple more examples of that, of some individual rewards could be things like a positive call home, a virtual coupon, or dropping their lowest grade. You can see there, all of those are no cost things for you. Those are rewards you can offer to your students that aren't causing you to have to buy anything or purchase anything or set anything extra up. An idea of a classroom or a small scale reward could be things like online class games, virtual activities that they do together, or Fun Friday, or whatever day of the week you may pick, online activities. I know this year my stepson is in 3rd grade and they have Fun Friday activities, and he loves working for those because it means that he doesn't have to do his typical work. He gets to pick from something else to do instead if all of his other work is turned in on time. So that's a great incentive for him to work hard to get all of his work done Monday through Thursday, because Friday is kind of like a break day. He looks at that even though it's something educational, he really likes to work for those fun day activities. And some school-wide or large-scale examples could be things like a spirit day, a virtual talent show, or a virtual field trip. And I have some examples of those on some of the upcoming slides. But again, these are just examples of getting creative and having fun with it and thinking about things that you would do in your classroom that you could do with your kids virtually. You talk about those virtual activities together. You could do show and tell. You could set that up when your Microsoft Teams or your Zoom, and something that you would let them earn in the classroom, you can also let them earn online. It's just going to work a little differently for you. So this is another resource from Florida PBIS. It was created by them. It was shared on Nevada's multi-tiered system of support projects Facebook page. So I just wanted to give credit where credit was due there. But this is talking about that layered approach to acknowledging appropriate behaviors and talking about those group contingencies. That idea of all for one for all, and each their own. So if you look at that all for one, an example of that is that all our assignments are posted to the virtual classroom platform on time. When that happens, everyone earns the first 5 minutes of class for telling jokes, for being responsible. So that group contingency, if everybody turns something in on time, we're going to have some free time to do something that you like to do before we start working. That idea of one for all. So students earn class points towards a virtual dance party for using their signals to ask questions when the teacher is teaching online. That means if you follow those expectations, if you earn your class points, then you get to participate. And then that acknowledgement, that reward for each their own. So for every 5 completed assignments, students get to choose their own enrichment activity. So that may be something similar, like I explained with my little guy at home, that after everything was completed on time, he got to choose from one of his Fun Friday activities to do instead of the work that was assigned for that day. So that's just another important part to remember when you're layering that, making sure you're using that system to catch students individually, the students that are working to earn those acknowledgements and earn those rewards, and then something that's contingent that everybody gets to participate in when that goal is met. So a few more ideas for some individual virtual rewards and incentives. On the left is a menu. I think this came from Teachers Pay Teachers as well last spring. And that's just showing the idea that for points that were earned, maybe it's tally marks because you're keeping track of something, or badges on Schoology, but for every total, there's a reward that students can unlock. So they can unlock it when they reach it. They can save those up for one that costs more money, and they can do that however they would like. But the idea that they are working for an individual reward with the things that they're earning. At the top on the right, you see iReady rewards, and this was created by a coworker of mine last year. She taught 3rd grade, and her students needed to complete iReady lessons. So she set up a reward system for this because it was really important for her, and I know for all of you, to make sure that what you're doing is still linked to their academics, because we want to make sure that we're blending those two areas together. So as her students completed iReady lessons, when they passed them, after so many, they got to cash those in for a reward. So that was a really great incentive for her kids who were struggling with meeting their minutes or passing their lessons when they were at home, because they didn't have that extra support that they were used to getting in the classroom. But it motivated them to keep working hard and keep pushing through that, because they knew there was something at the end of that for them. And at the bottom, you can see that's an example that I used last year when I was talking about those Class Dojo points. So for a set amount of points, there was a reward, just like that menu you see on the left. But things like a video message from the teacher, you got to skip an assignment, or you got to send a message to your class. So those were things, again, that didn't cost anything, but the students were interested in earning those rewards. So some classroom ideas for this. I had said the virtual activities together. So I know TikTok is such a big thing right now, and I feel like everywhere I go, I catch kids or teenagers doing TikTok dances in random places because they don't think anyone sees them. Not that you have to use that, but the idea that there are things kids are interested in that would motivate them to want to do. So having a virtual dance party, that class contingency of, okay, once we earn 100 points, we're going to have a class dance party for 15 minutes on Thursday, or whatever that however you can set that up to work. But, they get to turn their cameras on if they want. You're going to play their favorite music or their favorite songs. Maybe you let them request what those are, what those would be, just to really give them that time that they need, not only to have a reward for the work they're doing, but to connect with each other, because they're not getting that same experience this year that they have been getting when they're in person all the time. And on the left, you can see some ideas for some class coupons, things like they get to pick what to do. So that example of that layer I talked about a few minutes ago, of that they would get to tell jokes at the beginning of the class. So things like brain teasers or tongue twisters as an alternative to maybe instead of doing your morning warm up for math, you give them something fun or reward during that time. And I love the idea of that virtual picnic. I know we've had kids in this county that are working virtual through the state. And one of the things was that they missed seeing their friends at school, and their friends at school missed them. So a counselor that I know set up a lunch date for a student that was working at home. So he was at home eating lunch on his iPad, and his friends were at school eating lunch on their iPads, and they all got to sit and eat and talk together. And it was an awesome experience for all of them, something I had not thought of. And I love the idea that she was willing to set aside the time to do that, especially for that student who isn't experiencing all of the same things as the other kids. So they were seeing each other a couple of days a week, and he wasn't getting to. So how could they build that connection? How could they strengthen that relationship? So even doing that with your whole class, if you say, okay, on Wednesday at 11:30, if you want to have lunch with your friends because you're at home, you can all log into Teams and we're going to have lunch together. So I just think that's a really cool reward that you can offer as a class contingency. And again, is minimal work and no cost on your end. And moving on to that whole school, that larger scale reward or incentive. On the left is something from the school I taught at last spring. And our students had to do their iReady diagnostic at the end of the year at home. This was something that concerned us as teachers because while we don't help them on that assessment, we know that we are with them when they're doing that. We're monitoring their progress. We're making sure that they're staying engaged. We're making sure that we're taking their time. So as a staff, we talked, okay, how can we make sure that our kids are doing the things we know we need them to do when they're not with us? So we decided to do a drawing for gift cards. So as students completed their iReady diagnostic, if we saw that they weren't flagged for rushing, or, they turned it in on time, they had it completed on time, there were some different things that was all spelled out for them of how you would earn, your name into that drawing. And then the principal got on Facebook Live and drew names to hand out gift cards for students. So that was just a little way. That one obviously did cost a little bit. We partnered up with our PTA and some school funds to make that work. But just a small way to motivate students for something that was really important to us as a school. And we wanted to make sure it felt important to our kids at home. And then as I was doing some research on this topic, I came across these virtual field trips and like online theme days or spirit days. And I thought this was really cool. There are a lot of virtual field trip options out there. I started searching and I was amazed by what was available. You can see here on this one, there's a guide at an aquarium that's doing a trip with students. So I think it's an awesome idea, a school-wide idea, that if you had a school contingency of how you were going to work towards this, maybe it's something like an assessment like your iReady, or maybe it's something for a certain number of assignments turned in on time, or maybe it's something if you're doing points on a certain app that after you reach a certain number of points that the whole school gets to participate in a virtual field trip, or something like an online theme day. So you can see here that class is doing New York City or doing spirit days. I know a lot of schools have done that. So really just getting creative and how can we engage our students online in a way that's similar to what we would do with them if we had them in person. Here are some more examples from Florida PBIS. They seem to have been loaded down with a lot of things on this topic. And I was able to get a lot of great resources for you from there. The link to this specific document is there at the bottom of your screen. But like I said, if you go to their website and search for their virtual learning topic, you can find these as well. But these are just some virtual rewards ideas for elementary and then for secondary school students. And it's broken down into low prep, medium prep, and some high prep time. So I really encourage you to look at that if you are looking for a list of ideas to choose from. So now that we've talked about feedback, we've talked about acknowledgements, and we've talked about rewards, how do we make this all work? How do we blend it together when we know that we're going back and forth and making that work in what's considered our new normal now? So work through that back and forth of your students' learning environments to make sure that your expectations are clear from the beginning, regardless of the setting. So for example, if your students are working in a hybrid model, you're going to want to make sure they know exactly what's expected of them when they're with you in person and exactly what's expected of them when they're working online from home. So those clear expectations lead to more opportunities for you to acknowledge them doing those things and then reward them for it. Get to know your students. Find out what rewards they would like to work towards earning. Find out what motivates them. Find out what things they would be interested and wouldn't be interested in, really make it meaningful and something that they would enjoy. And then remember to provide as many opportunities for rewards as you can. The more frequent these are, it may be what the students need right now. And even though the structure of the reward is going to look different than how it's been in the past, they're still going to enjoy it and benefit from being rewarded. So if you're a school that typically does a large scale 9 weeks reward, and that's something that isn't possible for you because of the regulations you have in place or because of the schedule you have in place, it's okay to take that step backwards, take that step back and think, okay, what can we do? If we can't do 9 weeks rewards, here are the things we can put in place. We can do classroom rewards. We can do whole school rewards. It just might look different this year than it has looked before. But I can tell you that your kids are still going to benefit from that idea of being rewarded, even if it's not what they did last year. So as I said, let me talk to you through how to make this work, how to put all those pieces together. I've talked to you for a while now. But really, how do we tie all this together? So I'm going to go through an example. This example comes from a conversation that I had with a teacher at a school. So they were trying to work, their PBIS team was trying to work through how to make this work. They had a strong system set up for several years. They had their remote expectations. They had their acknowledgement system in place, but they just weren't sure how to tie it all together. So teachers there are giving tally marks when students earn an acknowledgement. They had been using tickets, but their students are working in a hybrid model, so they wanted a way to track it even when they weren't there in person. So an example of that would be that Word document I showed you where you have the student's name and then you have places for tally marks. So they decided that's what they were going to do. The PBIS team decided that teachers needed to give a certain number of acknowledgements a week because this helped them to ensure that all their teachers were giving them, that all their students were receiving them, and that they'd be able to take this a step farther and use the data to check in with kids who weren't earning them to see what supports they needed. And that piece of the conversation I thought was really interesting and really powerful. They had been saying, okay, we're giving acknowledgements, but some of our kids aren't earning them. So we've talked to our second chance teacher, and she started checking in with those kids to see what they needed at home. So look, we talk about data. When we talk about behavior data, we might not be seeing those behavior. We might not have the office discipline referrals or the think sheets or the points or the infractions that we are used to seeing because we don't have the same model of how our kids are coming to school this year, but we do have data on a lot of things. And one of those things is, are your kids doing what's expected of them? And if they're not, what's the reason behind that? So that was really powerful, a part of that conversation that I wanted to make sure I shared with you, because they were looking at it from a way of, instead of punishing or providing consequences for those students who were not turning their work in on time or who were not logging into live lessons, they used that to say, what do they need from us and how can we help them? Then they decided that each classroom teacher would provide students with rewards as they earned tally marks. So the teachers surveyed their students to see what was going to motivate them, and then they created a menu of reward choices, similar to the ones that I showed you earlier that I used last year. And as a school, they set a goal that after a certain number of tally marks were earned school-wide, every class would have a reward on their day in school. This could be something that you do virtually. So if your students aren't with you in school, like this school was going one day a week, so they said, okay, on your day in school, you get a reward. But they also said if our color on the map would happen to change and we aren't able to be in person, we want to make sure that this reward is something we could do with the students virtually. So once they earn it, they still get it. So all students will receive this reward regardless of how many tally marks they have, because that's a school-wide contingency, and you're using that to build those positive relationships to motivate students to do work. So once the goal was met, everybody got it. I talked about surveying their students. So there's a few examples here that Alicia helped me dig up, actually. And there are links to these in the resources I'm going to share with you, but I also have the name of them on the screen if you want to search for them, or if you would like us to send these to you, let me know if it's something you're interested in. But these are just some reinforcement or motivation surveys to find out what types of activities, what types of rewards would motivate your students if you're not sure how to do that on your own. So to wrap up making this work in the new normal, you're going to make a plan. You're going to talk about your expectations and how you can acknowledge those. You're going to talk about what rewards you can offer when students are receiving their acknowledgements. Then you're going to follow through with the plan. That's a really key piece here. So we make this plan. We're going to make sure we follow through with it, because our students are going to know if we tell them a plan, if we don't follow through, they're going to lose their motivation. If the plan doesn't work, change it. I worked in a school that we built our PBIS program from the ground up. It took us several years to get where we wanted to be with it. And there were a lot of things we tried that didn't work. So we went back to the drawing board, we changed them, and we tried it again. So you're all operating in something that's new. This is not something any of us have experience in. We weren't trained to be hybrid teachers from the beginning of our education. So it's okay that things we try don't go the way we planned. Change it if it needs changed. And let us help you. Like Alicia said, I'm the behavior support specialist in the North. There are 3 other behavior support specialists. I'm going to share that information with you. So reach out to your behavior support specialist, because this is something that they can help you work through for your specific school to meet your specific needs. So like I said, here are some resources that I pulled information from to put this together for you today. Like I said, I did some brainstorming, but I knew very quickly that this was not something I knew everything I needed to know about, because again, this is something new that none of us know how to navigate. So if you'd like, I know we can send this PowerPoint and this recording to you. So if any of these resources may be helpful to you, please be sure to check them out. Also, a little shout out. There is a video on our YouTube channel that Alicia mentioned. If you go to YouTube and search for WVBMHTAC, there is a video, PBIS Rewards and Acknowledgements in a Virtual World, that Alicia presented. It was created by Jen Everhart, who is our behavior support specialist in the Mountain region. And this was presented last spring. So it doesn't have the same information that I talked about today, but it does have a lot of that background information on rewards and acknowledgements in that virtual reward. So if you need to take a little bit of a step back, or just strengthen the information that you learned today and get more information to add to it, be sure to check out this video, because she did a wonderful job addressing it last spring when we first went virtual in the state. So before I turn it over, I have a couple more quick things, and then I'll let Alicia talk again. I just wanted to share my information with you. Again, my name is Erin Day. I'm the behavior support specialist in the Northern region. But if you have any questions about what I talked about today and you are not working in the Northern region, you are still welcome to reach out to me. My email is on the screen, day137@marshall.edu. And here's a map for our state and the territories that our behavior support specialists cover. So if you can see, I'm there in the orange in the north. Tiffany Hendershaw is in the Eastern Panhandle in the blue. Jen Everhart is in the green in the mountain region, and then Terrell Jones is in the purple in the southern region. You'll also notice that we have early childhood behavior support specialists as well, that really focus on those kiddos in our young grades. So Sarah Smouse is in the northern region, and you can see her counties are marked with a blue diamond or blue triangle. And then Jessica George is in the southern region. Her counties are marked with the red triangle. So if you are teaching preschool kindergarten or know someone that is, then you think you could benefit from reaching out to them, make sure that you do so. And then at the bottom is a link to our website. If you are interested in getting more information or more assistance in rolling this out in your school and what I've talked about today, please go to our website at marshall.edu/BMHTAC and click on request for technical assistance. You can fill out that form. It just takes a minute, and then your behavior support specialist will be in contact with you to talk to you more about your needs. So, Alicia, if you don't mind, I'm going to leave this up while you talk, if that's okay, so they can take a second to do that. But like Alicia mentioned at the beginning, we would like your feedback today. We picked this time hoping that after school worked for most teachers, but we know that every county is working in a different model and it is not uniform across the state. So we just want your feedback on what works best for you, if this worked for you, if there are some other suggestions that you have. So if you either go to that link that is at the bottom of your screen or scan the QR code to the right, we would love your feedback on the timing of this presentation today, or again, some suggestions for those that we have planned for the future. I know there's no perfect answer to that question, but if we can get a feel for what would work best for most of you, we certainly want to accommodate as many people's needs as we can. If you happen to be watching this as a recording, please go ahead and take a moment to do this as well. We will keep that survey open so that if you're watching this here in the next few days or next weeks to come, that you are able to give us your input as well. So thanks for listening today. I hope you guys got some information that you were looking for. Please reach out to us as we can help you more. And Alicia, I will let you finish up.
You did a wonderful job. I don't have much more to say. I did put a link in the chat box in case your QR code wouldn't work or you couldn't copy that over. So it is in the chat box as well. We appreciate you spending the last hour with us. We hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow. If you have questions, please let me, my email is at holt64@marshall.edu. Let your behavior support specialist know. The reason this webinar is happening is because we heard the same question from multiple schools and we've realized that it was a need across the state, and we would love to do more of that. So if you have a question and you don't want to request technical assistance, but you're just like, hey, I've been thinking about that, go ahead and send us an email, because it's likely that it's a question somebody else has, and that allows us to get content to you that is useful for you, and that's really what we want to do. So we hope you have a wonderful night. Email us or send us any questions that you might have, and everybody have a safe evening and a wonderful Veterans Day. Thanks, everybody.